My goal is to get Braden to do this for the next 2 years on his nights and weekends. But
I think you have to start with a bachelor's degree, my man.
yeah, that's what I was saying. I'm not sure they're going to take Braden.
No.
But since you're a business owner, I think they will. What I gathered,
I can ace the interview.
Yeah, what I've gathered in some of those requirements is if you're a successful professional in the field of study already, typically you're going to get in. Even without an undergrad. But if you're like a graduate student and you've done nothing in your life, they're going to want you to take a GRE or something just to prove that you know what you're talking about. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of How to Invest in Commercial Real Estate. I'm super excited today. A longtime family friend of mine is in town. His name is John Ballinger. He's also a successful investor of both Precision Equity and the Criterion Fund. He's right off camera here. Coolest thing about my friend is he flies Marine One for the president, which I think is one of the most awesome jobs you could have. But he's retiring and he's starting to get more full-time into investing in real estate. And a buddy of his we have today is Benjamin Meyers. You're just outside of the DC area in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And he runs Eberly Meyers. It's a construction company, urban walkable development. They focus on really transitioning older buildings into really cool lifestyle multifamily. And we thought since he was in town with my friend John that we'd have him on and talk about his story and how he got into commercial real estate. Welcome, Benjamin, to the show.
Yeah, thanks.
So the first thing I'd like for you to tell us, because you are running this company, is just give us a little bit of a background of, you weren't in real estate. I believe you said you had an art degree and were doing photojournalism at the White House, which is super cool in itself. But how did you then transition into real estate? Because a lot of our listeners love to learn how they might get in, and hearing other people's stories can give them some inspiration.
Yeah. So just the 5-second version is I was on Capitol Hill in the White House for about 8 years, and not thrilled with sort of the political environment. I felt at the end of the day my energy was zapped more often than not, beyond the work component of it. And so I went back to the thing that I kind of grew up around, which is construction. Always sort of swinging a hammer, getting involved in different things, and I had an opportunity to work for a regional, national company, Pulte Homes, that has a mid-Atlantic multifamily division. And effectively, they have a good training program and people skills. They have some other metrics that they value. A lot of their clientele are generals and different people that they build townhouses, condos, or whatever in the Northern Virginia metro area, DC metro area. So I got an opportunity to work there for a number of years and was just a really great education in project management and scale. We would have 3 or 4 buildings going on at once at different levels. One would be moving dirt, one would be framing, one would be taking it to finish, and one would be handing off the units to customers, to whoever the end user was, which is typically a condo. So great experience, and they kind of helped facilitate my further education. I got a master's in real estate development at George Mason, which is an excellent program.
I love that. I want to ask about that because I've looked into getting a master's in real estate or master of real estate development several times, never pulled the trigger, kind of throughout my real estate career. So tell us, did that provide you the keys? Is it something you would recommend people do if they see a long-term vision to getting into commercial real estate?
Yeah, it's probably the thing that gave me the confidence to believe that I understand what the risks were. So I viewed George Mason's degree, the MRED program, they refer to it as a dirt degree, which is effectively, it teaches you soup to nuts how to find property, how to analyze it, how to secure on and off market deals, how to understand the legal aspects, real estate law, and where the pitfalls are, and what are the terminology that you want to make sure that are in each deal to reduce your risk.
Did you look at other universities to see if they had that, or it was just convenient for you, or they happen to have it? Or
yeah,
because I've looked too, and I can't find that many of those kinds.
There
of
are
degrees.
not that many. Yeah. I don't know about this area, this region in DC. American University has a program, Georgetown University, or they have a program, Mason has a program, John Hopkins. There's about 4 or 5 schools, and they do an annual inter-school competition where a property owner is trying to figure out what to do with their property, and so
It's an actual case.
it's an actual case study,
that's
and
interesting.
I got selected to be a part of that team. We presented and won. We won
Oh,
a
nice.
$10,000, which was kind of cool.
That's amazing.
We brought a lease for Harris Teeter, which is like a 75,000 square foot lease
Wow.
with 400. It was
I can see why you won.
yeah, but they were like they actually executed on a number of elements of our plan, and the schools also get access to an architect, a builder, accounting firms to put together the model and the presentation. So
That's a
each
nice
school
program.
has
That's a nice
awesome
program.
awesome program. But the factor, the thing that made it valuable, intrinsically valuable for that program, Mason's program, is the educators themselves practice their profession. So my finance professor worked for BF Saul, massive company in Northern Virginia. They own millions of square feet. They develop, their renovation budgets are in the hundreds of millions on Class A assets in DC proper.
So they're not just normal professors. Where
No.
That's all they do.
Their numbers are, we're going to work on a $150 million analysis. I want you to build a spreadsheet that covers waterfall investments and
that's nice.
all this kind of stuff. Way more than a peon getting started would need. And
That's dense. I mean, that's dense material.
So how long is the program?
it's a 2-year, you can go through it in 2 years.
Part-time?
In the evenings, yeah. It's geared towards working professionals.
No, it's really good. I think there's so many people out there that want to do things in life, not just real estate, and they're just sitting around not taking action. And it's either because they don't know what action to take or they're afraid.
Yeah.
And knowledge is the tool that will combat that fear
Yes,
or that will
yeah,
give you
it's
the
a great-
confidence to move ahead and take an action. But most people don't really spend all the time getting the knowledge. So this is a great example how you got first class, top grade knowledge on the area that you wanted to be in.
I can tell you from experience too, it's probably way easier, at least for my learning style. I learn way easier when somebody's teaching it to me and I can ask questions. I was just
Absolutely.
watching hours and hours of like how to fill out an Argus model. And you watch enough of those and you can kind of get enough of the basis points to use it. But anyway, that's a dense degree.
So the thing that also is pretty as equally as valuable as the educators was who I was in class with. So you had attorneys that are wanting to understand the development process to better serve their clients. You have real estate brokers, you have builders, so your classmates are, when you partner up on a team, you're like, oh, that's cool. Hey, come walk a project with me that's down here. We're working on X, Y, or Z, anyway, it was a great experience, and it's hard to compare with other schools because I don't have the practical experience, but education was empowering for me, both to transition from construction management into development, which is not normally comes from the finance side of things. You get a MBA and then you get hired by CBRE or some REIT or something like that to help run analytics on a big deal or deals. So it helped me get into development. It also helped me get into the higher ed space is sort of a unique space that I got. My next job after working construction management was working for a company called B&D, Brailsford and Dunleavy. It's a DC-based sort of owner's rep organization. They rep universities, higher ed, K-12. They rep municipalities. They represent the schools out in San Francisco. They represent DC Metro schools.
And for those that are listening that don't know what an owner's rep is, and you're going to correct me, I'm sure, but schools or even beginners, laymen, they go and they hire a GC, and the owner's rep protects the owner's interest and makes sure they don't get screwed by the GC and make sure the project goes flawlessly or tries to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you have highly educated people running an institution that are trying to make educated decisions and good decisions on an area in the world that they know little about. So you're a translator or a broker. So the construction team, whatever, comes back with a change order and you see, well, these were unforeseen circumstances and there's going to be an increase cost of $500,000 for X for site work. Well, a higher ed's going to say, hey, you're trying to fleece me. Explain, I want a third party to verify that this is a reasonable request, or whatever the number is. In that, it goes both ways, because a lot of times the GC want support. Like, you're the mediary, right? They need a translator to communicate effectively with the ownership team, which is the university or the school. And the school
the GC is okay with an owner's rep then too, right? Because it helps them.
Yeah, it helps them. It makes the conversation much more clean, and it makes
because everyone's being mean to you, and then you're nice back to them.
Yeah. That's right. They both complain. They both complain in, and you manage the complaints and try to. The easier, the more smooth it goes, the better it is for all parties. So you just absorb and try to communicate in a way that's effective.
Yeah, and so we're using an owner's rep on our. We're trying to do a development here in Tulsa. It's going slow, but we ended up doing that. And the reason I went and tried to get an owner's rep is because the person I was working with, we weren't speaking the same language, and I wanted to make sure my interests were being protected, and so that's why I went out and got it.
Awesome.
Okay, quick question about the masters. What did you have to take a test to get included in that, or because you're already a working professional, they just admitted you?
So at the master's level, it depends on the school. I didn't take a GRE or a GMAT. I didn't take a test, but I did come with several letters of recommendation, and I had an intake interview, and it's about salesmanship, right? They're looking from their perspective. They're trying to grow a program, and it helps to have people from different backgrounds. I'm sure I was a wild card to them, because if you're looking at an attorney that's done real estate law for like 10 years, 15 years, and they're getting a degree, it's easy. It's an easy explanation. I had an 8-year window where I was doing photojournalism, and they're like, is this like a hobby of yours? What's your interest here? What's your end game? So it takes some salesmanship, but
My goal is to get Braden to do this for the next 2 years on his nights and weekends. But
I think you have to start with a bachelor's degree, my man.
yeah, that's what I was saying. I'm not sure they're going to take Braden.
No.
But since you're a business owner, I think they will. What I gathered,
I can ace the interview.
Yeah, what I've gathered in some of those requirements is if you're a successful professional in the field of study already, typically you're going to get in. Even without an undergrad. But if you're like a graduate student and you've done nothing in your life, they're going to want you to take a GRE or something just to prove that you know what you're talking about. Well, anyway, that's a side note. So, Braden, we'll see if you can get in.
Yeah. We finished the master's in real estate development.
Yeah.
So I guess bridge the gap from education and the confidence that you got from the education, which, by the way, we preach all the time, right? Of how to read the books, talk to the people, go to the conferences, be in the room, immerse yourself in the education. I'm glad to hear that's a reoccurring theme from somebody who wasn't in real estate to now real estate development owner.
Absolutely.
Bridge the gap for me between education and you guys starting this company and deciding
we're going to do it.
Urban, walkable, multifamily, because that's a cool little niche there.
Yeah. It's it kind of comes down to this. When you're helping facilitate, so a lot of this is good communication, right? A developer is basically the cog of the wheel that everyone's looking for direction from. So you're dealing with a land use attorney, you're dealing with an architect, an engineer, you're dealing with a property owner, you're dealing with investors, you're dealing with all these people. They're looking for somebody to be transparent and honest, to communicate effectively, and to help them from the beginning to understand their risks, navigate the risks, and through the performance, whether it's better or worse or as you target. So good communication is highly key, and that actually is a transition from working as a photojournalist. I photographed, maybe north of 60 official portraits for members of Congress, State of the Unions. There are a bunch of things like that I did, inauguration, things like that. But you learn to deal with high professional people that expect a certain level of respect or candor, or maybe just to even give them the honor of giving them space to talk. So that transition for me was super helpful in dealing with higher ed, because those folks are also highly educated. They have a tremendous amount of value and they've worked really hard to get where they're at. And so communicating effectively without being condescending or without is just a key piece. So in the higher ed process, you're communicating to the builder, to the development team, and you're communicating to the educator. And it's a lot of work. I mean, you're trying to pull someone through a process that they may get or they may not. And they may have other interests that they may have a way of doing business, if you will, that's either more hard-nosed. No, we're going to draw the line here. We're going to really push back on this. And you're trying to find, but this is a reasonable request. You're always playing middleman. I had been buying singles, doubles, little quadplexes, whatever, with my brother at the time for 5-6 years. And we were like, well, what do we have that maybe we should do something with one of these things?
Were you buying to hold on to them or flipping them or just whatever?
Yeah, intrinsically we're cash flow guys. So I want to build a business that I can pass on to my kids that will help sustain my retirement. I hope that I never have to draw on my 401k. Mm-hmm. I want that to build and just hand that off. Mm-hmm. My assets, I want to be able to help educate my kids, my daughter and my son, and who right now it's only 2 of them. I want wealth preservation and value creation for my kids and help them understand how to build something for the long term. So I'm not a flipper, although the market these days are kind of, we've owned some things for a while now, and it's like, man, would I accept 3 times what I paid for it? I don't know. That's pretty compelling. Yeah. So the long and the short of it is we were trying to find ways of creating value with assets we had. And when I started looking at the zoning of one property in particular, I realized there was like an aha moment for me where I realized that the marketplace was communicating and understanding value of the asset itself. I have a 4-unit building. It produces $50,000 a year. The NOI is $20,000, $15,000, whatever the number is. And you take a cap rate on that, and you got yourself a value. Mm-hmm. And I can buy that. I can go and buy a 7 cap. Maybe now it's 6 cap or 6.5 cap or 5 cap, depending on the location. I can buy that. What the owners typically don't understand is what the capability of the site is. So we didn't, when we bought this little 4-unit, my brother's like, I got a 4-unit with a mobile home in the back. It's a 14,500 square foot lot. So mentally you put that's just the size of a single family house, right?
Yeah, third of an acre.
Yeah, third of an acre. But it's in a zoning that's in an urban core district of a small tertiary town to Lancaster. So it's 9,000 and change people in the town. And they're along a river. They're in between Lancaster and York. And there are some big economic indicators in the area. GlaxoSmithKline, which is a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical, has a headquarters 5 miles up the road.
That's good.
Turkey Hill, their headquarters is 2 miles up the road. The average income in a 5 and 10 mile radius might have been $120,000 in relatively rural Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And you're like, oh my goodness, well, why is this town not growing? And it's
a bunch of shitty housing.
Because a bunch of shitty housing. Yes, right. That's exactly it. And when people live in an area for a long time, it's really hard to get past what you know, what you believe to be true when you made up your mind 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
That's really good.
Anchored so low.
Yeah.
So as an outsider, I got trained to see what the capability of the site is. And I realized there is a massive delta between the capability of this site and what we bought it for and what I can buy a whole lot of other properties for. And I refer to it as unutilized density. So I was like, man, if I had $1 million now, I could buy 3 or 4 properties and I could probably create 20 million out of this. And the development process is not short, undetermined amount of time, depending on what you're trying to do. But if you're trying to develop outcomes, within the zoning use that it's already allowed by right. So I'm not changing the zone. I'm just submitting permits and going through the historic commission and the planning commission and all the folks that I need. I can find an architect, I can find an engineer, and I can put a plan in place. And the municipality, whether they want it there or not, they've already laid the roadmap through the ordinance.
Through the zoning.
Through zoning, what they want to see happen. That's what the ordinance is. It's a roadmap for where they want to see investment. So I looked at that and I'm like, oh my goodness. So I took a 4-unit with a mobile home and we're bringing to market that asset that we built 33 units.
On a third of an acre.
On a third of an acre.
How many stories?
4 stories with parking partially subgrade,
Okay.
At grade, I should say.
Yeah.
Commercial in the front, 3 levels of 11 per floor, partial parking, and then open parking in the back with views of the Susquehanna River.
I can't get over the lot size.
I know.
Well, you keep talking.
Well, I have another one that is much smaller than that, and it gets a greater density. But effectively, I'm building something for under $6 million that'll generate $630,000 to $650,000 of gross revenue, distributable between $250 and $300. That's maybe at a 5.5 cap. That might be close to an $8 to $9 million asset in a 9,000 population, 9 to 10,000. That is in a small community, and there is a 37 unit going on right up the road now. There is a hotel, a historic building being converted to a branded hotel on the same block. And I now am pursuing an option on an industrial site that the town desires to change the zone. The current owner doesn't want to, but the zone that it would change to allows me to do exactly what I did there. But it allows me, I can buy a property, I can overpay for an industrial site that's 40,000 square foot. $2.5 million. And then within 6 months and maybe $50,000, I will have changed the option to buy a $2.5 million property into an $8 million value because I can build 600 to 1,000 units by right.
Wow.
So
I love that.
Yeah,
that's the triage of value right there. And it's in a better location with better proximity to the river than my property. So my little 35 unit is setting the market on comp because comps are super hard when nothing's been built in 40 years.
Yeah.
And I'm now saying, thank you for the comp. Let's go ahead and build the first 200 unit and then the next 200 unit and then the next 200 unit and give me free. It's not free. There's work and some education behind it, but give me some value bump right out of the gate. Or I could sell them. Sell the plan.
I love it.
Are the tenants coming from the same community, or are they moving from outside communities?
So Lancaster County has roughly 600,000 people. York has roughly 450,000 people. And this is right between both of them.
Okay.
And the market is highly underserved.
You've got a big enough market to serve that.
Yeah.
I want to go just kind of recap on some of the themes that we do every week. But one is education. I love the example that matches real estate because I've looked at it. Brian's looked at it, and we're always talking read books and talk to experts. But this is a step outside that box that people should consider. And once again, that knowledge, it combats the fear, and that fear. Once you combat the fear and you overcome the fear, you're going to move past inaction to action. But can't think of my other 2 points.
It's also really nice because it's accommodable to a working professional, right? I mean, you said
Absolutely.
A lot of those are night programs, so it helps the transition, from a full-time job to.
Yeah. The second thing I think I wanted to say was we've had guest after guest come in, and the key to their success was looking at a property and envisioning something different than it was. You can buy real estate and make money all day long with exactly the way it's, the fourplex was making money.
Yeah.
You bought it, it's probably making an 8, 10, 12% return. But just like we had my friend on the other day that owns the furniture store where he's buying these houses with land, carving the land off, selling the house, and now he has buildable land and the house is still selling for the same amount and the land's free. Or if it's us buying the Vegas deal and looking at the parking lot and saying this quarter of an acre, this half an acre, You put a copy.
Yeah, I switched it on you. It was an acre before. It's a quarter acre
Yeah,
now.
pretty soon it'll be like 5,000 feet. But we sold that for over $1 million, and it was a parking lot that the previous 2 or 3 owners could have done the same thing, and they didn't because they weren't looking at it that way.
We're doing that same thing in Wichita.
Yeah,
we bought
Wichita.
3 pads for an 8.5 cap, and we're selling them for a 5.85. We power wash the buildings.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And now I love what you're doing. You're now getting in an urban setting with high dense, flexible type space, and saying we can build up.
Yeah.
And your master's degree gave you a lot of the keys to be able to do that and see it.
Yeah. So this is the synthesis of how I look at real estate is different than the way a lot of people look at real estate. And it's not intrinsically me. It's just the method at which I can sniff out the value. And that is to reverse engineer. So I know that if I'm looking at changing the zoning, I'm going to take it from industrial to multifamily or commercial or whatever the change in use is going to be, or a farm to a townhouse community. I know that that's going to take me about 12 to 15 months, generally speaking. Now, maybe there's enough meat on that bone that makes a ton of sense. But it's also, I'm relying on the good graces of the municipality to do that. And I might get community people that don't quite have the same understanding of what the needs of the community are. They might show up at your meeting and they combat you and call you names and say you're a money grubber and all that kind of stuff.
There's been big, massive projects that looked really cool that's been turned down in Tulsa recently because it's against a very affluent part of town. And those people, get a hold of their local people to go in and fight the project and shut it down. So, and of course you're dealing with that. Like you said before we got on the show, Lancaster is one of the oldest
in-town cities in America.
Yeah. So there's a lot of old buildings that people don't want torn down.
Yeah. So the flipped script, if you will, on how to reduce, as a developer, your objective is to manage risk. You're trying to manage entitlement risk and market risk and financing risk and all of these other things. And there's a lot of risk. Yeah. And if you do it right, the rewards are very healthy in proportion to the risk.
Yep.
I don't look at rezoning unless I am very confident that I can achieve it, that I already know the community members, or I feel like there's a way that it will be well received, and my dollar amount, an option on this land, is super low. So my risk is low, and I'm willing to take that risk because I'm working on other deals, and every deal takes so long, you're working on a couple at a time.
So you didn't even get it in contract, just to clarify, you buy an option?
I secure an option. I say, hey, I really like your property. Would you ever consider selling? And you say, yeah, I'd sell it to you for $2.5 million, thinking it's going to scare me off. And I'm like, sounds like a great idea. He's like, oh my goodness, this guy's going to give me $2.5 million. Sign this paper saying, I'll give you $15,000 this year, $25,000 the next year, and $25,000 the next year, non-refundable, hard. As soon as you get the money, that's yours to keep. I'll still honor the $2.5 million purchase price, but I have 3 years to get it through the entitlement process. And my risk is $50,000, $65,000 if it takes me through 2.5 years.
Right.
And it's going to cost me $15,000 for conceptual, architectural, and a concept plan for my site plan. And I can get my attorney to change the zone conditional on my purchase. So all of that, my risk in it is $75,000, $100,000, and my upside goes from 2.5 to 8 million.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a risk worth taking. But I typically, and I'm going to pursue deals that have that much meat on the bone. But the truth is, if I know that I want to do what I start with the outcome, I want multifamily, urban walkable in parts of town that I believe are in the path of progress. One street over from the good. So I buy in the area that I can get real value, and then I redevelop it and change where the line is, and now I'm in the good part of town.
Yeah, and then you go one street over and one street over.
You change where the line is.
I love
that.
You change where the line is. That's going to be the outtake.
So,
I love it. We're going to have to wrap it up. It's so interesting. And it's even got my mind thinking, and even with the option to purchase, it takes me back to Carlton Sheets and Russ Whitney and some of these guys early 80s that were talking about all the creative ways to get a hold of real estate or get control of it. So this has been super informative. Benjamin Meyers, Eberly Meyers, out of what would you say, you guys? What city are you out of?
Lancaster, PA. We're
All right.
Central PA. South
You have a
Central.
website we can direct them to?
We do. It's EberlyMyers.com.
All right.
It's,
well, hopefully we'll have some people look you guys up and just to get familiar with what you're doing. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Sounds
Guys, like and subscribe. If you have a note to send us a message. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, let us know. Until next time, thanks again.
yeah.
Thanks for coming on,
Thanks.
man.
Yeah.
All right. That was sweet.